All right, it says I'm on the air, so hello, word sesh. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, right? So, wherever you're tuning in, thank you for joining me for my fourth annual word sesh. And one, I'm very excited to be here. Whenever Scott reaches out and asks me to hang out with y'all for another 50 minutes. I am always super happy and ecstatic to do so. And when he had asked what I maybe wanted to talk about, I had a couple of different things, um, and I've been thinking a lot about community and contributing to core and crowdfunding. I think a lot about Bachhuber and WPCLI and open source and raising money and why money is even necessary, and how building open source software and apps and things is sort of a tough challenge and kind of a tough gig. But one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about in terms of just myself is sort of where I am and kind of how I got here and what that I don't know what that means, I guess, for what it is that I hope to see for WordPress in the future. So for the next 50 or so minutes, I'm going to talk about three things that are very near and dear to my heart. One, I'm going to talk about myself, and so I am literally talking about my heart. Two, I'm going to talk about the WordPress community, and three, I'm going to talk about WordPress, the software itself. So, me, my most of y'all would look at me and know me as the project lead for BuddyPress and BBPress. And that is generally how I try to introduce myself to people that are in the WordPress community, because I think that that's the easiest and shortest way to get ramped up or to recognize what my contributions largely would be. But when I think about my involvement in WordPress and looking back, I have largely only been involved with forks of WordPress. And so when I discovered WordPress was mostly because I had discovered BBPress, and largely because I was trying to integrate it with WordPress MU. And so it's depending on how you and what your definition of the word fork is to you or what it means. And I think in the WordPress community that the word fork has somehow have a negative connotation to it, as in I'm going to take my ball and go home, or as in I don't like the way that things are here, and so what would a fork of WordPress look like? And while I think that those are certainly reasons to fork a piece of software, because spiritually you don't like the direction that's going, or you don't like that the community isn't reacting to you or to what it is that you want to do or your accomplishments in a certain way, and that it is very easy to have a mindset of us versus them, and then that I think is a natural sort of way to feel at first, if you feel undervalued, if you feel like your contributions to anything in general are not giving you the reward that you are hoping to get from it. And so in thinking about forking WordPress and thinking about this talk, it got me thinking about my time at Automattic. And so I had blogged about what I feel like my relationship was with Automattic when I was there. And I'm not going to talk too much about it. If you're interested, you can read it. But the gist of it is that I, for the most part, had felt like there were certain things that I either wasn't appreciated for, or there were ideas and visions and things that I had hoped to accomplish that weren't they weren't something that Automattic as a company was interested in pursuing. And that is going to be the case for WordPress as a piece of software for as long as WordPress is around. There are going to be big ideas. There are going to be big initiatives. There are going to be small things. There's going to be all sorts of ideas that are really good ideas that just may not be right for the state of WordPress at whatever time that these ideas come across. And we are a family, for better or for worse. And families, depending on who you are, depending on how you grew up, depending on your experiences with your own families or having a surrogate family or being adopted or whatever your family situation is, they are infinitely complex and infinitely dynamic. And they are always going to be something that ebbs and flows, that is ups and downs, that has goods and bads. And what's important with the family, and what's important for us together to stick together or to not stick together, is to understand that this we've got a long time to figure this out. There is not a whole lot of urgency with any of this. We do set up 3-month release cycles. We do want to try and make sure that things stay alive and that they are dynamic and that they look active and that they look fun and exciting and that it is rewarding to jump in and start contributing and helping out. And that is like any family. That is any community. That is your local, that is the local neighborhood. That is the block. That is the village that you live in. You decide whether or not you're walking down the sidewalk and you pick up a piece of trash or if you leave it. You decide if you see a kid fall off his bike and you go and you help them or you let them cry. You decide what your values are and what's important to you and how frequently and how deep that you are willing to stick your neck out for any one of the issues that you believe in. And so when someone decides to fork a piece of software, if someone decides to fork WordPress, it will be because they have ideas, they have thoughts about what they want WordPress to be that are not where WordPress is at the time. And so that is what started with WordPress MU. That is what started with WordPress multi-site. Multi-site was a big idea. It was an idea for WordPress.com to host multiple sites and multiple blogs on one installation of WordPress. And so what do? You have the version of WordPress that everyone wants to use that's easy and turnkey, that makes sense for the majority of people. But you have the version of WordPress that you need to run a business. You've got the version of WordPress that scales sideways to have multiple sites on one installation with users in the middle. And so what do? You fork it. You say, okay, we need someone to work in a vacuum. We need someone to go in the corner and solve this problem so that the rest of WordPress doesn't have to worry about it. But this guy, these people that care about multiple sites in WordPress can focus on solving that problem in the best way that they know how. And so I have joked, code quality in multi-site being bad, or the contributions or the function names or the database schema or all these things that could be so much better. And it's very easy just to look at WordPress's code base. It's very easy to look at WordPress multi-site and say, this is shit. You can say, I don't like it. It could have been better. I could have done better. We could have done better. This shouldn't have happened, and on and on and on. That's a terrible, absolutely terrible, embarrassing outlook to have on any of the things that it is that we're working on. WordPress multi-site powers WordPress.com, powers WordPress.org, BuddyPress.org, BBPress.org, all of WordCamp.org. If the code is crap, it wouldn't work. Seems to work okay. So when someone says that they don't like it or that they're not going to use it because it isn't this certain ideology or this certain approach or this certain framework, the haters are going to hate. It's just how it's going to be. And so with BBPress and BackPress, these were forks of WordPress that were reimagined to solve a different problem from a different direction. You took the spirit of what WordPress was. You took the things that made WordPress great, and you said, okay, let's let's flip it a little bit. Let's improve the code base. Let's take what we've learned. Let's try something different and new. But let's make sure that this piece of software is still going to work and integrate with WordPress itself. You fork WordPress, you change the schema a little bit, you use something from a different piece of software. Old bbPress used MyBB. You say, okay, we're going to take this code and our experience, and we're going to make a better version of WordPress. And old bbPress 1, has a lot of great code in it, a lot of cool ideas, a lot of really sharp, ahead of their time approaches and ideas to things like multiple databases, multiple installations, scaling across multiple instances of bbPress, and you look at the effort that went into solving these problems, and unfortunately, if you get to where we are today, all of the effort that went into BackPress is wasted because nobody uses it anymore. Nobody likes it anymore. It's not rewarding to work on anymore. And that's okay because it was an experiment. It was something to try. It was solving a different need and a different problem in a different time when that was the vision for the whole family and suite of software that rotates generally around WordPress at this point today. And so when I think about forking WordPress, I don't think about it in a way that is in any way negative. It is easy to think about it that way. It is easy to say I am frustrated with whatever, with open track tickets that aren't getting anywhere, with initiatives or ideas that I feel like this piece of software should do, and I can't stand it, or I don't like this person, or this person's a bully, or I don't like the way that this person is, or whatever. I don't see it that way. When I see forking WordPress, I see a world where the only thing that ever beats WordPress is WordPress. A different version of WordPress, a different outlook from a different direction of WordPress, a WordPress that has the REST API in it, that ditches PHP old school compatibility stuff. You take it, you fork it, you cut all the stuff out, you make WordPress the type of WordPress that you want it to be, and you do it in a way that on a long enough timeline, on a 5-year WordPress MU type of timeline, you can merge these two things back together in a way that everyone is still happy and friendly and can appreciate all of the work that happened to make that other version of WordPress good enough to make the better current version of WordPress better. This is not, I don't imagine a hard fork being received very well. It alienates contributors, it alienates Matt, it alienates everyone that has poured their hard work into it. And it's different than the B2 fork to WordPress. B2 was abandoned. It was a piece of software that you knock on somebody's door and they don't answer, and you knock and they don't answer, and you go, okay, well, either I'm breaking in, I'm going to find another door to knock on. And so, Matt and Mike found another door. They took it, they made B2 into WordPress, and they had a vision for it. Matt had things that he wanted to do, and so he did them. He did them in a way, and we've all done them now in a way where, to a certain degree, depending on your perspective and how you view WordPress and how you use WordPress, that everybody's installation of WordPress is already a fork of WordPress. Everybody's installation is using a different variety of plugins and themes, drop-ins, MU plugins, building app frameworks, OAuth, LDAP, shared user tables, multi-site installations, multi-network installations. The sky is the limit. These are forks. These are forks of WordPress in every direction. And so whether or not a fork is a separate distro, a separate distribution of WordPress that comes with separate packaging, or whether or not it is a fork to have a different audience that cares about a different set of values, I think that when it happens, when we get to a point where we are comfortable saying that there are certain things that certain groups of people want to try and tackle inside of WordPress, that it is okay to do those things privately, or it is separate from whatever the things are that are potential roadblocks or things that are in whoever's way that feels like they are better off trying to accomplish something alone or figuring something out. And so my motivation for that and thinking about this and is very internal, is very personal to me, in a way that I know that if I need to learn something, if I need to get good at something, if I need to level myself up to a certain amount of mastery in a topic or an idea, I need to do it alone. I need to sit in the corner. I need to study it. I need to think about it. I need to tear it apart. I need to see how it works. I need to understand the components. I need to figure out how it works inside and out. And then I get to come out with this education and knowledge and say, hey guys, I got it. I figured it out. And sometimes that's not easy to do in public all the time. Incomplete ideas, incomplete thoughts, fuzzy concepts that may or may not actually make any sense to anybody else. And so there is an aha moment and a wake up moment where you can take ideas like turning WP settings into a bunch of do action calls. Okay, well, this is something that I've had in my head for 10 years that has never really been achievable until recent developments in WordPress core. And so it would have been easy to say, you know what, I have to have and maintain my own version of WordPress in order to get this done. But I didn't. Instead, we stick it out. You figure out other ways to occupy your time and get the other things that you're passionate about done. And you sit on those ideas until you're ready to execute on them. And so I've said it before. I probably said it in a WordCamp talk. And if anyone that has heard my talks is probably sick of hearing me go on about stuff like this. But I read something that Michelangelo, before he would introduce and start creating some art, statues, canvases, whatever, that he would just sit and stare at something for sometimes days at a time. And someone would say, what are you doing? And he would say, I'm working. Leave me alone. He's not painting. He's not chipping away at a block of marble. He's thinking about what it is that he wants to do. And I relate to that. I can see that there are things that I want for BuddyPress or bbPress or for WordPress or the community or leadership or WordPress.org, profiles.wordpress.org. God, there are so many things that would be awesome to do that it's hard to decide which one of these things are the most valuable. Which ones of these things are the things that are worth spending time on? Which parts of these things are the things that require heavy lifting, a hard fork of an idea to sit alone and try and whittle your way out of? And I think if you look at the landscape of WordPress.org, BuddyPress.org, bbPress.org, that is very easy to look at all these things and see a level of incompleteness. And I think when I look at WordPress as a piece of software, multi-site specifically, user roles specifically, post statuses specifically, that I can see a level of incompleteness in WordPress as a software that I, for whatever reason, find hugely rewarding to stick around and try and figure out. And despite quarrels or despite not seeing eye to eye, despite being misunderstood, despite incomplete thoughts on track and having stuff get shut down because it doesn't make any sense to anybody anyways yet, I get that we are all in this together. And I think that is important for the WordPress community to settle down and understand and feel calm and realize that either we are in this together to try and make the web a better place, or we need to settle down. You need to take WordPress in a different direction for yourself. Give yourself some time to reflect, think about what it is that you want for WordPress to be and do, and then hopefully come back in a way that people are going to be more receptive to. That's not unusual. That happens all the time. There are forks of software all around us. If you look at, and I've said this before, but whether or not this is true, it might not be true. And I am comfortable speculating and totally making this up. But I imagine that WP Engine runs a very specific flavor of WordPress for themselves. They have some kind of extra caching plugins or drop-ins or something else that's bolted into their WordPress that is different than my WordPress. That Pagely has a different version of WordPress that is unique to what it is that they need their environment to be. I can tell you for a fact, WordPress.com is a different version of WordPress than you will ever see in your entire life. And it is probably the coolest version of WordPress that anyone could ever see. It makes me sad that more of WordPress.com isn't open source and available for everyone to see. Because there is so much cool stuff on WordPress.com that if you are a WordPress enthusiast that appreciates the behind the scenes type stuff, is the coolest WordPress installation you'll ever see. The history that's involved, the decision making that's gone into it. We are celebrating the forks of WordPress. We are taking the ideas and the things that make WordPress great, and we are choosing to make them better in a way that elevates the entire WordPress community and ecosystem as a whole. Now, whether or not you feel or believe that a company like WP Engine or Pagely or Automattic has any kind of obligation to open source their secret sauce or to put it on GitHub or to talk about what makes it cool is your opinion. It is okay. You could be upset that Automattic doesn't open source more, or you could not care at all and focus and worry about your own thing. But these are spiritual forks that everyone has been running that no one thinks about as forks that are okay. And so Bachhuber tweeted, what would a fork of WordPress look like? And so if he was asking me that question, in my imagination, a fork of WordPress is a WordPress that gets rid of drop-ins. WP settings is action, so that everything is a drop-in. Literally every piece of WordPress is pluggable if you need for it to be. Most people will never care that is even possible or take advantage of that as an option, but that makes WordPress itself infinitely flexible in a way that you don't ever need to fork the code base itself. You may want to distribute your own version of WordPress. And at that point, in my imagination, WordPress becomes more of a dependency in your installation than it is a fork of WordPress. But for whatever it is, if we get WordPress to the point where it doesn't matter if it comes with V1 or V2 or V10 of a REST API, it comes with all of them or it comes with none of them, that is what the installer, the owner of that WordPress installation, they are exercising their freedom to have whatever version of WordPress that they want. And so that's a slippery slope. It's dangerous. It makes it unpredictable a little bit, whatever. There are all sorts of pros and cons to having all these different flavors, but we literally already have that. You can, imagine a world where there is a REST API built into WordPress core, and you ping some WordPress installation for BuddyPress endpoints, and they're not there. That'll happen. You're gonna look for them, and they're not going to be there. Oh well, right? Like, as long as we are able to engineer WordPress in such a way that these things don't actually cause any kind of fatal problems or errors, these are solvable problems. Like, these are things where we can make WordPress as a piece of software and an environment friendly to users and machines and everybody. And we have been, right? Like, every time that someone wants to patch core for a very brief moment in time, you are running a fork of WordPress. You have taken WordPress, you have changed it, you have modified the code, and then you decide whether or not it is worthy or ready to get pushed upstream back into the project. And then others decide. And so there's a whole forking process that happens in very minute and small sort of ways. And so if everyone forked WordPress on purpose, and if everybody was running their own version with their own custom code and everything else, then we would for sure have a little bit of chaos. And that's maybe not super awesome to have. But depending on how you feel about growth and people's individual growth and the growth of WordPress as a platform and the growth of the web, I think a little bit of that. I think a little bit more of separate forks and distributions that are there to address and solve very specific needs is healthy. It is healthy for individual growth, professional growth, and everything else. There's no reason why we couldn't ship a version of BuddyPress that came with WordPress in it. You have a turnkey install. A turnkey install of BuddyPress that already works right out of the box. You download one zip, you unzip it, you run it and go, or you deploy it in a Docker container that just comes all ready to go. Whatever it is. Is it a fork? Not really. It's a separate distro, and it's probably the same version of WordPress core that everybody else already uses all over the place. But it is different. It's modified. It is a changed piece of software because of the plugin and theme architecture and ecosystem that we have. So I think it's important for the future of WordPress to get comfortable with the idea that all of us get comfortable with the idea of there being official, okay, healthy forks, distros of WordPress that come with specific configurations, specific plugins and themes to solve very specific problems. Because if we don't get comfortable with it, then we will be encumbered by our own one funnel, our own place where everything has to go at the same time. If everything always only bubbles up to a team of 10, 20 core committers and contributors, that's a lot of pressure on them. Whether or not they feel it, whether or not I feel it, whether or not anyone can look at it and say that they're capable or not capable, or that it affects them or positively or negatively, it's a lot of pressure to put on a few people to be the guardians of 26% of the web. And over the course of the past 2 or 3 years, the WordPress community, the WordPress leads, Matt, the strides that have gone into the WordPress Foundation and separating the trademark out of Matt or Automattic. And say what you will about Matt being all over the place and all these things. Matt's a nice guy. Matt has tried really hard to make sure that we are okay with the state of things. And as a community, I think that it's really powerful to know that there is someone that everybody, for the most part, likes and believes in and can see that is a very brilliant individual that has largely been hands-off from WordPress as a project for pretty long, but the longest that I've seen, really. Whether or not there's a secret back channel, whether or not there's some sort of Illuminati thing, whatever, seems a little silly. But he has taken a piece of software that he loves and he has given it away to let us do what we want with it. That's incredible. What do you do with that, right? I mean, that is, well, how many times in your life do you have the opportunity to create a thing and then set it free, right? I mean, children are about the only thing that you can imagine are the thing that like you can raise and turn into and try and do your best to like make the best possible thing that you could do out of it, and then give it away. The joy of doing that for the web as an individual must feel immense. And if I were Matt, and I know that Matt's going to be, talking in 20 hours or so, and I doubt, I mean, if he wants to address me, that would be cool. But if he doesn't, that's okay too. It's been a while since we've chatted. But if someone forked BuddyPress or forked one of my plugins, if someone forked WordPress, I imagine the process of seeing that happen is probably, the emotional process of seeing that is probably pretty funny. It's probably there's probably a whole series of events that would happen. One, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you not part of the whole? What happened wrong where you did not feel comfortable contributing to what we've already got going on here? And then I think the question is, did anything actually go wrong? Maybe it didn't. Maybe you just want to do something else that we're not doing. I think in the end, knowing that someone else is putting effort into something that you similarly love or enjoy or agree with, knowing that the GPL, for the most part, expects, sort of demands, hopefully tries to enforce the fact that a fork of WordPress would still be something open, that ideally there would be something to learn from that fork, and ideally it's quality enough to bring back in a way that everyone is able to benefit and feel good and happy about what that looks like. But this is a topic that I haven't. I mean, I've thought about it recently. I've sort of I don't know, belted a little bit about out loud in private with some small intimate sort of groups of people. Generally not out of anger, but largely out of wanting to see some things happen that are really difficult to happen in the current state of WordPress, and the responsibility that it has to maintain backwards compatibility, maintain 100% stability, all those things. There's something that I enjoy personally about tearing something completely apart and reimagining it as something else. And because my WordPress career has largely been spent working on and with forks of WordPress already, with multi-site and backpress, the concept of a fork of WordPress does not at all feel foreign to me in any way. And as a result, that almost makes it difficult for me to imagine feeling like it is a bad thing. And so if I went to Matt today and I said, hey, Matt, I'm thinking about forking WordPress, and here are the reasons why I would want to do it, it would be hard for me to imagine Matt's response to be anything other than, wow, that's super awesome, and I can't wait to see what you accomplish. I think that if Matt was upset about a fork, if Matt or Automattic or someone specifically or anyone specifically, or someone looks at why, there's all sorts of speculation about the reasons and the drama, and everyone wants to make everybody be a hero or a villain and wants to turn this into a good or a bad thing. But the reality is that there are no villains, really. There are nobody that is trying to do anything that is going to burn anybody else's house down here. We are all trying to take what resources that we have and what we know about software development and community and leadership, and apply it in the best way that we know how. And so one of the things that I would like to see in terms of distributions or forks of WordPress is very similar to what we already have with Linux. We look at the core of iOS, or the core of macOS, or the core of what will probably eventually be Windows, the core of Ubuntu. These are a core piece of software. These are WordPress core with very specific package managers, very specific ideologies about how to solve very specific problems for an audience of people that happen to think the way that these specific distributions of Linux happen to work. And so my real world analogy for this, my real world application for why a fork or many forks of WordPress are healthy, is the number of places that exist in the world that you walk past and drive past and look at and admire, that you never go to, that you never have a need to go to a certain car dealership because you're never going to buy a Mitsubishi. You never go to Bank of America because you're happy with your bank the way that it is. You don't change your insurance company. You don't do whatever. You don't go to a different coffee shop or a different cafe because you like what you've got. You've solved those problems. You've offloaded the processing of that decision making to these places that find you joy. And so if WordPress core universally across our entire WordPress community essentially provides us with maximum joy, then we're able to take plugins and themes and other things and solve different problems in different ways to provide an open community of installation types for WordPress that are an infinite combination of things that let anyone walk right by and go, I have no need for this one because I don't care about LMSs, and I don't need this one because I don't care about communities. I don't need this one because I don't need forums. I don't need this one because I don't need an online shopping cart, but I do need this one for this reason. And so we've talked about in the core direction a long time of having installation types and what it looks like to walk someone through installing WordPress. Do you want a community? Do you want a shopping cart? Do you want this? Do you want this? And then having all these ideas are great ideas. They're super good. But it's going to be hard for that to be part of WordPress's installation process. I think that there could be a bundler. There could be a separate application that bundles these things together. Could be anything. Literally could be anything. But companies like Apple, as much as I hate to use Apple for examples for things, because one, it's totally played out. Two, everyone uses Apple as an example for everything. And three, my experience trying to beta test most of Apple software is maximally terrible all the time. But I can't help myself. So, but Apple as an organization does an incredible job of taking every open source, open and available protocol and thing and making it sweet. Email, notes, reminders, calendar, chat, the operating system itself. The majority of these things are an open protocol with a whole lot of polish and finish and thought and design and architecture bolted on top of it to take the basic fundamental protocol of something like email and making the simplest mail app that you could really make. And not everyone's going to like it. Someone else is going to try a different app. Somebody else likes Gmail more than the built-in app. They're all that. Thank heaven that there are. Thank developers. Thank everyone that there are decisions. There are forks. There are different ideas and implementations of these things that we can use. But Apple does a good job of taking the open source, the things that are available, WebKit, and then adding their level of sophistication and simplicity on top of these things that is invisible. You don't think that Apple is a master of honing in on the open source, but they truly are. The other application for this, as much as it's not necessarily open source, but I'll use it as another real world example, is cars. Cars and automobiles are built largely from components that are not from Ford or Tesla or Subaru. They are from Nippon Denso. They are from NGK. They're from Enki. They're from companies that want to make wheels and tires and spark plugs and suspension. Eibach, H&R. These are companies that have been around for decades that care about automobiles. And so you take off-the-shelf components. You take springs with a certain compression rate. You take struts. You take wheels that are a certain size and dimension that fit the car that it is that you want to build. And you eventually fork automotive industry into being a car that you've designed with a shell that looks and feels the way that you want it to look. These are things that happen in the world around us constantly. We don't think of them as forks. You don't look at a Tesla and think of it as an engineering fork, but it absolutely truly is. You take the suspension components and you reimagine them. Sometimes you're fabricating stuff. Sometimes you're writing your own plugins. Sometimes you take off the shelf stuff. And sometimes it just happens to work okay. So these are things that are so common that the idea of having separate forks and distributions of WordPress should not in any way be scary, feel uncomfortable, feel foreign, feel like a thing that shouldn't happen. These are things that have to happen for growth, for happiness, for the future of WordPress in general, and for individuals and groups that are not comfortable contributing to core to still have a way and a place to make WordPress be what they want and need for it to be. And so I've got some time for questions. I think I've got the 10-minute mark. So my closer is that I have it in my mind to eventually have a distribution, a separate distribution of WordPress, one that doesn't come with Akismet, one that doesn't come with Hello Dolly, one that doesn't come with Gravatar integration built in, one that turns off Ping-O-Matic, one that strips WordPress of the things that are not WordPress and comes with things that make WordPress, in my opinion, maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit different. Things like having multi-site turned on automatically. Even if you only install one site, multi-site's already turned on. If you want to add a new site, you can just add a new site. If you want to have multiple networks, we have multi-network turned on automatically. These are things that we can just have script done, install easy, so that the question of how do I turn on multi-site, how do I install it this way, could just be that way out of the box. And WordPress is still WordPress. It's still exactly the version of WordPress 4.6, 4.7, and on and on and on. And so I don't know exactly what the implementation of this looks like. I don't know what the name of it would be. I don't know what I would call it. And I don't know that anyone would use it. But it is a thing that I do want to try because I think that there is a growing segment that wants to try and use WordPress in a different way. They want to have a RESTful API right out of the box. They want to have OAuth maybe out of the box. They want to have database scalability across multiple database servers or reads and writes right out of the box. They want to have a certain way, a certain thing, without having to go in and solve these problems or find these plugins or find the best way or thing to do these certain things. So in that way, I will leave you where I started, which is when anybody asks what the competition is for WordPress, or we look at the numbers for what are the installation numbers for Drupal, and what are the installation numbers for Ghost, or what is the market share for Joomla, or this or that, or whatever else. We need to set ourselves up so that the only piece of software that is ever competing with WordPress is WordPress. And I think that means that we will secure, the web as a whole. We will make sure that the web is safe, secure, it's easy to use, it's accessible to everybody. And then all of us that are able to improve it and make it better can do so in a way that is safe and friendly and accepting and warm and inviting and encouraging and all those things. So I guess I've got 5 minutes. So if there are questions, I'm happy to scroll through the chat and try and go back or forth and see who's got what to say. Without scrolling too far back, Jonathan had mentioned WordPress for higher ed and enterprise. Those are the very two clear and obvious applications where having a version of WordPress specifically geared towards higher ed, where site creation is easy for schools and roles are easy to distribute for instructors and TAs and students to be able to join and write or blog or have an LMS involved or have whatever it is that it needs. Boone Gerges has taken this pretty far with BuddyPress and Commons in a Box, though it isn't a fork of WordPress. It is largely just a package of BuddyPress and some tools to help with the Commons space. Jorban asks what he should eat for dinner. I feel like the obvious answer is pizza rolls. That's just me. Misner asks about Bedrock. Yeah, I mean, the Roots is and it's already a fork, right? I mean, it is a whole different approach to wrapping an environment, a very cool environment around WordPress already. So, and here's the thing about while we have time and while I'm here, and since this is a hot topic, uh, I have seen right mumblings and grumblings about uh, negative interactions between some of the folks that build Bedrock and Roots, right? Like some things that somebody said that somebody doesn't like, somebody disagrees with, and everyone wants to fight, and we don't like this guy, and that guy's kind of a jerk, or whatever else. And those things might be true. They might. Who knows? Doesn't matter. What matters is your output. The output matters more, I think, than I mean, yeah, you shouldn't be mean to people. Like that is like generally, personally, how I feel about the world. I'm not going to try and force that on anybody. But uh, if what they want to do is build Bedrock and Roots, and they want to build the best version of that thing that they can, who cares? That's awesome. They should totally do that. They should continue doing that. Everyone that looks at that should feel nothing but impressed and proud that they have solving a specific need for the rest of the WordPress community. It's a big deal that they've chosen a pack, and they have what they have themes, right? They have or one specific theme and a bunch of other like plugins that go around the theme Roots. There's this theme. It's cool. It's super cool. So I noticed John Block says that we need a dependency manager, and there is no such thing as a dependency manager. They don't exist. Everyone's terrible. Everyone hates every dependency manager under the sun that's ever exists. They're not good. There's no such thing. Dependencies manage you. Chutzpah. What do we got for scroll back? I've got 2 minutes. Gosh, I don't know what else to say. Thank you for linking everything in here for Bedrock and Sage. I appreciate that. That's very helpful. I don't know. I think that's it. I think I'm out. I think if anybody has questions, please feel free to follow me on the Twitters if you'd like. JJJ. I generally blog at jaco.by, but I am really trying to get one of those sweet .blog domains. So if anyone knows, anyone that could get me jjj.blog, that would be pretty cool. Otherwise, thank you very much for tuning in, and hopefully we get some good discussion about this happening and going, and hopefully everyone gets where I'm coming from, and hopefully I haven't offended anybody. And if I've said something that offended somebody, please let me know, because I didn't mean to. And we'll chat later. So thank you, Scott and Brad, for letting me enjoy the 4th annual inaugural Word Session. I'll be lurking in the shadows and in the comments for the next 22 hours, I guess. So bye, y'all. Thank you very much.